Okay, guys, so Will Smith has been in the news a lot recently, and I feel like it's important to talk about. I'm going to call this his sellout era. Not in the sense that I'm going to try to put the guy down or really kind of poke fun at him for lack of original ideas or kind of the waning of his star power. The point here is I'm kind of more interested to see where this goes. If you know anything about me, you know that I am a big proponent of like anything can be good. I would like a sequel to pretty much everything. I'm that guy kind of putting up the posters like, hey, like I'm calling for a sequel for literally everything that's ever been made because I like continuations of stories. I mean, it is what it is. But with that being said, I'm kind of shocked with everything that we've been hearing about with him recently. Obviously, the continuation of the Bad Boys franchise because the last two movies in that universe have done so incredibly well. And then also back in 2022, we got word that they were going to do an I Am Legend 2 finally. After all of the stops and starts from that original sequel pitch that was going to be a prequel before, and then, it just kind of fell apart, but then Michael B. Jordan blew up and Will Smith and him were going to work together. It's a whole thing, but we haven't really heard a whole lot since then, but we'll talk about a little bit of the updates that Will Smith gave us just in a second. But now we're getting kind of a 1-2 punch with maybe another Hancock movie and another Hitch movie. There's a lot to discuss here about Will Smith being a character actor, probably one of the most successful character actors of the 21st century, kind of selling out and making sequels to some of his biggest movies, whether we ask for it or not. So like I said, we're going to go over some quotes about him working with Michael B. Jordan on I Am Legend 2, but I just wanted to focus primarily on Hancock 2, where Will Smith stated, Hancock 2, yeah, they're leaking all my information. So yeah. So there's a really cool Hancock 2 idea, but we haven't talked about it. So I'm going to give you one little piece. Zendaya's will be approached for a role in Hancock 2. So Zendaya is going to be the next Awkwafina of pretty much all Hollywood, right? Somebody who kind of shows up in every single movie, regardless of whether you want them to or not. Not that she's a bad actress. She's actually a very good actress, and I would love to see her in more things. It's just kind of crazy when people start popping up in literally everything. That being said, Hancock 2 is kind of a good idea. The fact that the original came out in 2008 and they haven't done anything with it, and that first movie really started off incredibly strong, but then petered out in the end. It just never really felt very cohesive, and the idea that you have this superpowered person where everyone around him is not superpowered, and pretty much the only real antagonistic force in that movie is his toxic relationship with Charlize Theron. But despite that, the movie still had the need to have some kind of a superhero concept to it. So you just have like regular thieves and gangster members and stuff going after him time after time after time. And the ideas that they had that would work at some level just kind of eventually working because of some unfortunate aspect of his powers or literally his emotional relationship is creeping up on them and they would have no way of knowing. The movie just kind of fell apart, and the idea of doing a sequel never really made sense because they didn't set it up as there are more people like them or there's some other antagonizing force that would be able to take on literal Superman. But again, I think that there might be something there about probably dealing with a teenage daughter. Not that Zendaya always has to play a teenager, but I guess that's just her lot in life. Her and Tom Holland, that's just what they're going to play until the end of time. But the idea of having a teenager dealing with all of these powers, probably a long-lost child or forgotten child between Will Smith and Charlize Theron, having been kind of away from them, forgotten about, and not aging, because when all these people are apart, they do not age and they don't really have any weaknesses. Maybe the fact that she's now kind of coming to her own terms, trying to figure out what's going on in her life and starts causing any ruckus, and she's the big supervillain with all the same powers, and Will Smith and Charlize Theron having to fight her, getting closer, all of them kind of losing their powers and feeling okay about themselves. To me, that's something that might make sense, but again, is it enough to justify making another movie, especially one that's going to be almost 20 years after the fact of the original coming out? Personally, I'm not sure that's enough, but hey, if you want to discuss that in the comments below, we can certainly do that. Another one, and I'm not going to take a whole lot of time about this, is we're hearing that he's going to make another Hitch movie, which what that is, I have no idea. I love Hitch. I felt like it was a perfect kind of culmination of Will Smith as a character actor, one of the most charismatic, fun actors, especially of the early 21st century and 2000s. And not that it really matters anyway, but I mean, if you want a sequel to Hitch, or at least a spiritual sequel, then just go watch the Aladdin remake that they did with Guy Ritchie just a couple of years ago. Because Will Smith as the genie is the best part of that movie. He didn't try to redo what Robin Williams did. He just kind of played Hitch again in the exact same format that original Hitch movie was. And yeah, it just kind of worked on that term because Will Smith's charisma, at least, up until all of the drama recently, it just leaks off of the screen, and there's a reason why people have loved him for as long as they have. That being said, it's probably been too long for another Hitch movie. If you want to do something akin to that, just do another Aladdin movie. That movie made over $1 billion. People would be excited to see it. I think I would be excited to see it. And now just moving on, because this one is a little bit more exciting to me, that we're finally getting a little bit more news about this supposed sequel to I Am Legend, which the original movie back in 2007 ended kind of abruptly. It's based off a book and multiple different adaptations of this novel from television as well as movies. The idea that Will Smith's character is the concept of a legend. He's the vampire to these zombie vampire things, and he's the one who doesn't sacrifice himself at the end. He realizes the error of his ways. He gives back the wife that they're, the main guy is coming after and looking for, and then they just go off. There's no blood cure or anything else like that. That was the original ending they shot, and then it didn't test well, or people didn't understand it, so they changed it to have a more heroic ending where Will Smith sacrifices himself but gives the woman and her boy, again, it's been a while, but he gives them his blood in order to make an antidote to kind of save the human race. And yeah, that just never really sat well with me. That whole movie was very good up until those two characters just showing up out of nowhere. So when they were initially talking about a sequel, it wasn't a sequel, it was a prequel that would focus on Will Smith living alone in New York and trying to survive with his dog. And I felt like that was a really cool concept, something that I would have loved to explore, especially with kind of them throwing a wrench in any kind of real sequel with Will Smith involved, right? So I feel like this is one of the reasons why this particular pitch is at least a little bit exciting for me as well as most people. Because one of the things that came out of the gate is that we are not using the theatrical ending for the movie. We are going to use the ending that we originally shot and that we cut and that most people probably don't know about. But we're going to use that one where Will Smith's character survives and, now here we are 20 years later. So with just that context out of the way, let's get into what Will Smith was talking about with Michael B. Jordan and I Am Legend 2. He said, "Me and Michael B. Jordan, we sat down for about a week, just went through character stuff. Akiva Goldsman is the writer, so he's just putting it together. So that's a real thing. I'd love to work with Jordan. He really gets it. I work with a lot of young actors and young performers, and it's like there's a difference between actors and movie stars, right? So actors can come in and do their part well. A movie star understands the whole machine and knows how to present themselves all the way from the concept of an idea to delivery on the red carpet in 190 plus countries in the world. So there's a scope of understanding that Michael B. Jordan has that everyone doesn't have. So this isn't really an indicator of anything other than, yeah, we're still working on this concept, even though it was announced back in 2022. They're at least still meeting about it. They're talking about it. They're writing it. They're trying to get everything together. And it's not like Will Smith and Michael B. Jordan aren't busy. They're incredibly busy. I would love to talk about Michael B. Jordan working on Creed 4 sometime soon, because he did talk about that recently, and I have a whole lot to say on it. But with that being said, I do like the idea that Will Smith is looking at Michael B. Jordan as kind of a successor of what he was doing in the early 2000s. The idea that this guy is going to pick up the mantle and become a real star, not just an IP figure, not someone who can just put out sequel after sequel after sequel. He can bring characters to life, do diversified amount of movies that all make money because people show up to see Michael B. Jordan. I think that's interesting because, like I said at the beginning of this video, I think Will Smith is kind of at the late stages of his career. He's won an Oscar. He's pretty much been at the top of the mountain, and there's probably no way that he can get back there. So maybe the best way for him forward is, like I said, the Sellout era. Make movies or sequels or continuations, produce things that you have some kind of tangible connection to. We've talked about Hitch, we've talked about I Am Legend, we've talked about Hancock 2. He's going to do Bad Boys 5. He can do Aladdin 2. There's so many movies that Will Smith has done over the course of his entire career where people would be interested, if nothing else, to see him come back and do something like that. I mean, quite frankly, the guy teased everyone about coming into the Matrix franchise now that they're going to do a 5th film, even though that was just kind of a weird promotion for his song. That being said, it would be really interesting if somehow he gets involved with that franchise. The guy has a lot of cachet. I've already talked about him having a ton of charisma. It would be interesting to see him pop up in franchise galore pretty much until the twilight of his career, because I think he's earned it. And I would like to see these movies. Maybe I'm the only one here. I'll go see Hancock 2. I'll see all of these things. But I wanted to kind of talk about this in order to hear what y'all have to say about it. Do you want to see more sequels from Will Smith, or do you think he's better off doing more original movies or dramatic movies or whatever he has done that you've liked over the last couple of decades? Let's discuss this in the comment section below. Love you all.